Most presidents wait until they leave the White House to cash in. President Trump takes a different approach. Crypto deals, hotels, golf courses, 747s, everything is on the table. If there's a way to make money off the presidency, he's on it. Tonight, we'll talk about all the ways Trump is treating the White House and Mar-a-Lago as places to help make him richer than he already is. Next.
This is Washington Week with The Atlantic. Corporate funding provided by...
In 1995, two friends set out to make wireless coverage accessible to all. With no long-term contracts, nationwide coverage, and 100% U.S.-based customer support. Consumer Cellular. Freedom calls.
Additional funding is provided by Koo and Patricia Ewan for the Ewan Foundation, committed to bridging cultural differences in our communities. Sandra and Carl DeLay Magnuson, Rose Herschel and Andy Shreves, Robert and Susan Rosenbaum, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. Once again, from the David M. Rubenstein studio at WETA in Washington, Editor-in-Chief of The Atlantic and moderator, Jeffrey Goldberg.
Good evening and welcome to Washington Week. So here's a partial list of deals and moves Donald Trump has done that would have sunk any other president. He's accepted a $400 million plane as a gift from a Middle East autocracy that hosts both Hamas and the Taliban and also may be the home of a new Trump hotel. He's dined with top investors in one of his cryptocurrency projects and reportedly promised to promote the crypto industry from the White House. He's pardoned prominent Republicans and reality TV stars, including a man convicted of securities fraud who, with his wife, donated $1.8 million to Trump's re-election campaign. For good measure, by the way, he commuted the sentence of the leader of the murderous Chicago criminal organization, the Gangster Disciples. Trump's family is charging $500,000 to join a private club in Washington, D.C. He's building a golf resort in Vietnam, a country seeking tariff relief for $1.5 billion, and a Trump skyscraper in Ho Chi Minh City, a fact Ho Chi Minh himself would have undoubtedly found darkly amusing. The Trump Organization is planning to build a Trump Tower in Riyadh for good measure. After a dinner at Mar-a-Lago, Jeff Bezos agreed to pay $40 million to license a documentary about Melania Trump, the most expensive licensing fee ever paid for a documentary. I could go on, but I won't because I want our panel to tell us what this all means. Joining me tonight, Peter Baker, the chief White House correspondent at the New York Times. Leigh Caldwell is the chief Washington correspondent for Puck. And Stephen Hayes is the editor of The Dispatch. Thank you for joining me. I want to read you all something my colleague David Frum just wrote about Trump and his relationship to corruption. Quote, "Nothing like this has ever been attempted or even imagined in the history of the American presidency. Throw away the history books, discard feeble comparisons to scandals of the past. There's no analogy with any previous action by any past president. The brazenness of the self-enrichment resembles nothing seen in any earlier White House. This is American corruption on the scale of a post-Soviet republic or a post-colonial African dictatorship." Peter, agree, disagree? Is there any precedent for what we're seeing in American history?
No, I mean, there really isn't. Nothing comes close. At this point, there have been presidents who have monetized the presidency on some level, and they used it to benefit their family businesses or whatever. Certainly, there have been family members who tried to trade off their famous president.
That happens more often than not.
It happened in the last administration. Let's face it, Hunter Biden certainly traded off his father's name, but it was penny ante compared to what we're talking about now. Even if you believe all the worst allegations against Hunter Biden, it would be a tiny fraction of what we're seeing now in terms of the scale and scope of this billions of dollars. Literally, this cryptocurrency thing alone, his family and businesses have got $320 million in fees just in the 4 months since he started it for creating nothing, by the way. I'm not much of an expert on crypto stuff, but it seems to be you don't actually have anything. There's no actual tower. At the end of the day, it's just this coin. And he's already made hundreds of millions of dollars. So now the question is, what does that do in terms of policy? That's the next question. You can certainly make some connections, right? The guy who shows up at this crypto dinner, Justin Sun, just had the SEC say, we're going to pause our fraud case against him. So he comes back to the country where he hadn't been in a couple of years after paying tens of millions of dollars for this crypto coin that he's bought. Is there a direct connection? it doesn't look good, obviously. And that's the problem with conflict of interest. Even if you're doing everything on the up and up, the appearance usually makes most presidents say, let's not do that because it might give the wrong impression. Trump has no problem with this.
Peter, you're giving me the impression that you have not yet purchased the Washington Week meme coin. I'm
looking for the discount.
I don't know if we're going to see you back at this table. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to see you back at this table. Leanne, it's interesting. Like in Watergate, by August of 1974, Republican leaders, House and Senate, bring Barry Goldwater with them as top cover to the White House, tell Richard Nixon, your support is evaporating across Congress. Democrat, obviously, but Republican as well. By the next day, Nixon resigns, even before, impeachment. Something remarkable has changed in Washington. Maybe it's a tribalism, maybe it's fear. But where is Congress on all of this? As Peter points out, Republicans were very activated by Hunter Biden's activities. No activation here whatsoever.
Yeah, remember they were trying to impeach President Biden because of Hunter Biden's activities. Yes, Republicans are completely silent about it. In fact, there's legislation on the Hill in the Senate right now called the Genius Act, which is about crypto, that was stalled for several weeks because once this crypto news with the president came out, Democrats demanded that there be some constraints on the administration when it comes to deals like this. They never reached an agreement, and this bipartisan legislation is moving forward without those constraints on the administration, trying to rein in and make some of this maybe not illegal, but some guardrails around it. But another thing is the president is immune from any sort of repercussions other than congressional impeachment, right? The Supreme Court has already ruled that the president cannot be charged with anything. And Republicans do not have any motivation, political or any way, to break with the president on this. This is not something that they think is worth getting in front of the president on.
Can I ask you this, though? I mean, and I know this probably will sound naive to you, but you said they have no political motivation, but what about just being shocked ethically or morally by this kind of brazen business dealing in the White House? So,
yeah, you think that is how it should play.
You talk to people all the time, and you talk to them privately as well. Is there any private anxiety about this, private anger?
I mean, privately, they're like, yeah, this isn't great. Publicly, you see some who say, well, we would prefer if it wasn't like this. Like Senator Josh Hawley is one of those people who has said something publicly, but they're not willing to do anything about it. And let me flip the question around, because even the Democrats aren't really making this much of an issue. And the reason they're not talking to Democrats is, first of all, the flood the zone thing is absolutely working. They can barely keep up. But also, Democrats are telling me, look, everyone knows that Donald Trump is corrupt. It is already baked in what people think about him. They also think that all politicians are corrupt. And so this is not a political argument that works right now. And so they are trying to refocus everything on chaos, on how Donald Trump is not helping inflation and costs and not helping your pocketbook specifically, because they found that people just don't really care and respond to the corruption.
I guess one of the things I'm surprised at, Steve, is throughout American history, there have been consequences for this kind of self-dealing, right? Whether it's Ulysses S. Grant, whose reputation suffered because of a corruption in the cabinet, Warren Harding, the Teapot Dome scandal, up to Watergate, obviously, and more minor incidents. This seems completely novel in American history. How do you explain the fact that no one seems to care?
Yeah. I mean, I think, what you read from David Frum was accurate. I agree with Peter. This is unprecedented. And, during the first Trump term, I think too many of our colleagues said things were unprecedented that weren't, in fact, unprecedented. This is truly unprecedented. We haven't seen this before. And I think one of the reasons that there's not more outrage is Leanne's last point. There's a general sense, certainly on the Republican side, rank and file Republican voters believe that everybody does this. This is what's been going on in Washington. Remember, Donald Trump ran and he was going to drain the swamp. This is the way that people perceive Washington working. And Trump just does it with he's a little bigger, does it with a little more flair. He's a little more aggressive. Right. And I think that's how you get Republican voters who can rationalize this, having talked to some of them about it. And in Congress, I think there's a divide on the Republican side. You have the sort of hardcore MAGA supporters who say, this is great, I'm glad he's doing this, I don't care, this is what everybody's done all along. And then you have, I'd say, a quiet majority who thinks it's awful. And they will tell you it's awful off the record or in private conversation. But they don't love it. They're not going to step up to do much about it.
Yeah. Are any of them, not to be overly cynical now, are any of them making money on any of this?
I mean, that's a real question, I think, when, and it's a question about the tariffs and what he's doing with the tariffs every single day. I mean, if you know that these things are coming, he announced he wants to now double the steel tariffs. Suddenly, people weren't expecting this. But if you knew that this was coming and you could potentially place bets that way, it could be profitable.
Well, and that's the thing, right? The president may be immune for actions that are officially, part of his job. People around him aren't. And normally administrations, in fact, you mentioned a couple of examples where presidents themselves didn't get in trouble, but the people around them had done a lot of things. Well, we don't know, right? Is somebody playing the market here? If they know the president, as you say, is going to say something and it'll tank the market, or the other way around, you could time it. There's no regulation right now. There's no regulatory authority right now that seems eager to look at that. Why?
Well, I want to come back to that point in 1 minute, but Steve, I want to ask you a question about the foreign entanglements here. It's one thing to have this guy who's got pardoned because of some securities thing, or some of these other characters who make donations to his campaign. But it's quite another thing to get into bed with Middle East autocracies, communist nations, communist governments from Asia. There are national security consequences here. Yes.
Huge potential.
Talk about those.
Well, look, I mean, I remember it wasn't that long ago when people like me were obsessed with reporting on Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. And those were, I suppose if you wanted to I still have problems with them. I thought it was grubby at the time. But at least they were sort of a bank shot to the person who's not still in charge. These are just open and aggressive.
But what do you mean by that?
Brazen.
Go into that a little bit.
Well, I mean, the $400 million plane that you mentioned. I mean, this is, Donald Trump is accepting this. He's celebrating it. He's got his people on his staff who are justifying it, rationalizing it, saying we'd be crazy not to do this. That's far worse than anything we reported on with respect to the Clinton Foundation back in 2016, 2016.
Maybe you could help me understand something about the Trumpian mentality. I wanted to watch something. This was from a meeting President Trump had in the Oval Office with the president of South Africa a little while ago. Let's just watch this for a second.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I take it. I would take it. If your country offered the United States Air Force a plane, I would take it.
He's serious.
Yeah, I think he's serious.
Yeah.
Is he serious?
He's not smiling.
No.
What's the thought process there? Why would he do this in the Oval Office? I mean, it seems degrading to the United States, the richest country in the world, to say, pay me tribute give me old planes, and I'll take them. I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he likes it when people sort of kowtow to him and go in and kiss the ring. I think that's exactly what was happening there. And it's part, Peter alluded to this earlier, part of what makes it hard to keep up with is the volume of it, and that it is so out in the open. And, you have talked to Republicans on the Hill, and they will say, hey, the Hunter Biden stuff was all hush-hush, and, there were these payments for his bad art that he got, and we had to subpoena people to find out about this. Trump's doing it in the open, so it must be justifiable. You're actually seeing Republicans make those arguments, and I think it's a strength of Trump.
They are literally comparing it to France giving us the Statue of Liberty.
Yes.
The airplane equates the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, I mean, there is something interesting here. That in journalism, obviously, a lot of the energy of investigative journalism goes into exposing the cover-up. But, Leanne, there's no cover-up
No.
here. There's just business
Yeah.
Like, business that would have been considered scandalous in any other administration.
And when Donald Trump Jr. goes overseas to help ink these deals, they're very open about it. Yeah. And there are no investigations on the Republican side into this. There are a couple letters and inquiries from the Democratic side in Congress into this. But, you know, Republicans are still investigating President Biden's administration. The Oversight Committee in the House just opened another investigation into the auto pen. And so they are still obsessed with that, while all of this, like you said, is completely out in the open.
Could you just do 20 seconds for all the normal people at home
the
who
auto
don't
pen.
follow the
Okay,
auto
yes.
pen scandal, what the auto pen scandal
Yes.
is?
Should I look into camera and explain?
Yeah, let's talk to America about the auto pen for a minute.
The fact that President Biden, the Republicans say, was so incapacitated that staffers were running the government using his signature with an auto pen.
Right. Which is not actually scandalous because presidents often use auto pens.
Use auto pens.
To sign vast numbers of
Also
letters.
produced zero facts on this. This is simply them
Correct.
trying to say, well, he's so
Right.
doddering, he must have had AIDS doing
Right.
the auto pen. They have no
Right.
idea.
Correct.
And
Right.
it doesn't matter that there are no facts behind
But
it.
they are subpoenaing people
Peter-
to come in.
Peter, one more angle on this that I'm interested in. Congress is obviously not providing muscular oversight now, but there used to be in government various bodies within the executive branch that would provide self-oversight.
Yeah.
I want to read something that you just wrote. Mr. Trump, the first convicted felon elected president, has erased ethical boundaries and dismantled the instruments of accountability that constrained his predecessors. There will be no official investigations because Mr. Trump has made sure of it. He has fired government inspectors general and ethics watchdogs, installed partisan loyalists to run the Justice Department, FBI, and regulatory agency, and dominated a Republican-controlled Congress unwilling to hold hearings. Talk about the changes that have been made in the inspector general system in the last 5 months.
Yeah, I mean, these are the mechanisms of accountability of a normal government, right? And he has made very clear by firing the people who held jobs like that, by putting people in like Pam Bondi and Kash Patel at the Justice Department and the FBI, what his expectations are. His expectations are, you're going to go after my enemies and you're not going to go after my friends. And he's done that through the pardons. He's done that through retribution time and time again. What happened in his first term when a special counsel was appointed by his own deputy attorney general, and he then spent the rest of his term, and ever since then, lambasting Rod Rosenstein for doing that, for appointing Bob Mueller to look into things. That is not going to happen in this term. And that's what's so different. Like under Reagan, when they investigated people in the Reagan administration, under Clinton, when they investigated people in the Clinton administration, there were multiple special counsels. Anytime you had a cabinet officer or somebody in there, even the president, do something that was questionable, there was this expectation that you would have a Justice Department appoint special counsel, independent counsel, whichever the structure they used, because you didn't trust the government to investigate itself. And people wanted to have independent investigation. There's no expectation that that's ever going to happen in the next 4 years.
And he fired the special counsel and put him to place an ally into the special counsel's office, who's only, I think, out of law school 3 years.
So there was a system here.
There's
a deliberate
system that will never be used under the next in this administration.
Right. I want to change subjects. Steve, I want to talk about Harvard for a minute, and I want to talk about specifically the Trump administration's seemingly war, I guess you could say, on Harvard. What's the motivation for this campaign? Harvard is obviously fighting back against it, but what's the motivation, the core motivation?
So I'd say there's a substantive motivation and a political motivation. The political motivation is it's probably good politics for Donald Trump. He puts himself out as the sort of champion of the common man. There's no better way to reinforce that image than by picking a fight with one of America's most prestigious universities. So it's probably a political win for Donald Trump. On the substantive side, you have, I'd say conservatives in general have had problems with not only Harvard, but problems with elite institutions, higher education, for sort of rank discrimination, for aggressive, over-the-top DEI policies, things that I think have some merit, arguments that have some merit. The Trump team has taken this sort of and done that times 10, times 100. J.D. Vance gave a speech at a national conservatism conference in 2021 before he was a candidate for the Senate. And the title of the speech was "Professors Are the Enemy." And it was a 30-minute stem winder about all of the problems with higher education, all the problems with academia. And he said, the universities are ruining our kids, are corrupting our kids. They're the enemy. They're not teaching the truth. They're teaching lies and deception. So that's sort of where I think a lot of this comes from. And it's a plan. I mean, none of this is happening by accident.
Right. Leanne, how's this playing politically?
This is, well, let's say two different things. On the Hill, Republicans this is not something that they want to break with the president on. This is not an issue that they are willing to stand in front of him on, like most issues, I should say. Politically, I actually don't know the answer to that. I think that most Americans, from what I'm reading in the polls and when I'm talking to my sources, say this is not on top of mind. This is not what they elected Donald Trump to do. And, that is something that I've heard from Republicans say that they hear from voters on the issue of DOGE and government spending and that sort of stuff. But this just seems pretty extreme for people who want immigration crackdown and want lower costs.
Right. Peter, is Harvard in real trouble?
Well, look, this is an administration that's been very clever and methodical about its use of government pressure on Harvard. They keep finding a new way to attack Harvard every single day. And on some of these, they may win. We don't know. Obviously, it's now starting to move its way through the courts. A judge this week said, no, you can't suddenly cut off their international students for the moment. It is going to go eventually to the Supreme Court, where there are a number of Harvard graduates sitting at the moment. I don't know what that means in terms of their personal
some of them
sympathies.
might hate Harvard, but that's it. We'll find out.
J.D. Vance is a Yale graduate. Obviously, some people came out of this experience in the Ivy Leagues feeling quite bitter about it, right? And they feel like they maybe a lone conservative in a liberal institution felt motivated to attack him. That's certainly
I'm sympathetic to the lack of ideological diversity to some of these arguments. But I think there's a risk for some blowback. If you look at what Trump is doing, he's demanding 5 years of videos of protests. He's saying that they need to meet some ideological diversity test proved by a third party. That's a problem.
Right. Well, we'll probably be talking about this again because this seems to be a sincere commitment on the part of the Trump administration, despite what you point out, Leanne, that it might not be top of mind for the average voter, but it's definitely top of mind
it's very personal.
for this administration. But we are going to have to leave it there. I do want to thank our panelists for coming on Washington Week, and I want to thank you at home for joining us. For more on corruption and the presidency, please read David Frum's latest article on theatlantic.com. I'm Jeffrey Goldberg. Good night from Washington.
Corporate funding for Washington Week with The Atlantic is provided by...
In 1995, two friends set out to make wireless coverage accessible to all. With no long-term contracts, nationwide coverage, and 100% U.S.-based customer support. Consumer Cellular. Freedom calls.
Additional funding is provided by Koo and Patricia Ewan for the Ewan Foundation, committed to bridging cultural differences in our communities. Sandra and Carl DeLay Magnuson, Rose Herschel and Andy Shreves, Robert and Susan Rosenbaum, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.